And then Mom and Dad, they separated, and I was a very early age, you know. But in the meantime, my grandmother was living on Good Street, next to Mr. Hardeman's grocery store. You have Mr. Hardeman's grocery store right on the corner of Good Street, and then there was my grandmother's shotgun spot, and then there was another lady named Miss Juanita, her shotgun spot, which was like a duplex shotgun, and then there was Miss Streeter, Mr. and Mrs. Streeter. She was a beautiful black lady that had the appearance of a Caucasian, married to Mr. Streeter, whom was a very elite gentleman that was a junk man. But they were a very elite couple, you know. And then around behind Mr. Hardeman, there was another shotgun apartment complex, not apartment, duplex complex. And that was attached to, we were on the actual campus of Booker T. Washington, on the corner. You know, and then that's when I first heard, I'd go out the back, and Coach Holly would be coaching his football team, which was the Booker T. Bulldogs. Ernie Banks was pretty much a superstar wide receiver at that time. You know, he played excellent football. A lot of people don't know him from his football. They know him from baseball. And following that, not too long after, they would be practicing on hard gravel and red clay. Then this group of musicians would come out. They were in the band for Booker T. I don't know who they were under the leadership of, but I do know the Samuels, Bobby Samuel, Saul Samuel, you know, they were in Booker T at that particular time, especially Bobby. And Bobby was one of the leading drum cadence players. And that's when I first heard the snare drum, you know, in a cadence fashion. And I was really impressed by that. So it turned out to be, I'm looking at being about 8 or 9, no more than 9 at that particular time. And my mom would always leave me with my grandmother. And when she would come in from work, my grandmother would say, well, you know where that boy is, you know. And I'd be either out back looking at the football team practice, knowing that the band was going to eventually come out. When the band would come out, I was automatically drawn in that direction because I wanted to hear, you know, I wanted to hear them drums and the bass drum and, you know, see them march and see all that colorful formations that they were practicing and so forth, you know. Because that was a big thing then, you know what I mean? Like I said, and me being a kid, you know, I was very impressed. Little did I know that I was going to be impressed to the point to where I would eventually end up being a drummer. You know, I had no idea that was happening. I do know that I love the drums, and oftentimes I'd make a request for the drums. My mother would say, oh boy, we don't need all that noise, you know, concentrate on playing football or something of that sort. Participate in some kind of sport, ride your bicycle, so forth, you know, and just brush me off, you know. Because also, my mom, when she would go to work, and then my grandmother would go to work, then that would leave me at home alone, which was a no-no. So they would send me over across the street to St. Paul Methodist Church under the pastorship of Reverend Loud. I don't remember the first initials. I don't know if it was HB or AB or but I do know that it was Reverend Loud, you know, and he was tall, muscular, hard, baritone voice, speaking gentleman. And they had a Bible study and kind of like a daycare, and also had a little football team. I mean, a baseball team. That's when I first got my baseball glove, because I used to play for the little Bible study class. And so I was back and forth between St. Paul during the day. I was there, and then we'd even have lunch, little sandwiches, refreshment. You know, St. Paul was very caring, even at that early age. I remember real close, because we used to have to go through the front, down into the basement. That's the way we went down, and it had those iron gates that you pull apart, you know. And I remember that real. I remember it vividly, you know. And it was. I'd always think of it when I would even drive through there, you know. And then as an adult, and then after a period of time, they started having those events and different events, and I had the pleasure of playing some of the events. I sat in once, I think, and I think I even worked it. No, I never worked it. I sat in. I was invited to sit in. I think Victor Cager was one of the performing artists, because I was performing with the Jazz Surgeons the very first time that I attended the church event. But Victor had told me about it, and Victor acknowledged, and I didn't sit in then, but this was on another occasion when Victor's group was playing and performing, and I think I come up and sat in and played a number or two, playing the drums behind Andrew. You know, Andrew gave up the throne for me. And following that, I started taking notice of the different events that would take place there, you know. But I never got away from the thought of how at one time, instead of this being Ruth Street, it was Good Street. And Mr. Hardeman's store on the corner, selling the cookies and the pickles and the penny candies and so forth. And that always stuck with me, you know, like how we would play hide and go seek and all that after dark. And the church always sit directly in front. And then on Sundays, I was obligated to go to church. I didn't have a choice. My mother also, she would be in church, and she would take me as a little boy. She would take me to church. And I remember the church being pretty much in the same order that it's in, with the stair-step seating, you know, that type of seating. The other thing that strikes me different now is the way that the entrance now is from the other side, which I don't know what was over there at one time. I remember Mr. Loud's house, or the pastor's house, was on the premises at one time. It was right of, it was on the south side of the church. Pretty white frame house, if I remember correctly, with a big tree in front, pretty yard, and a step up from the streets, sidewalk, up from the sidewalk, concrete steps, to my memory, you know. But anyway, following that, we moved to East Dallas. And then after moving to East Dallas, I lived on Baldwin. We stayed there for a minute. Then I moved to South Dallas. Lived on Dare Street. Now I'm 13, 14 years old. Got in contact with my aunt that had left and went to California while my mother's only sister, while we were living in the shotgun house on Good Street. And my aunt told my mother that because I had become somewhat of a troublesome youngster, and I was dissatisfied in the household, loved my mother to death, and I really thought I was the man of the house, and she remarried, and I had resentment from my stepdad at the moment, which that later turned into being a beautiful love affair between he and I. But then I talked to my mom. My mom had been confronted by my stepdad, and they got into some type of altercation. And I stepped forward, naturally, defending Mom. And my mother resented it and told me I was getting a little bit too big for my britches, and she didn't need me to interfere in her business like that. And I kind of took that at heart, and I called my aunt on the telephone. We didn't have cell phones then. I called her on, as we call it now, the land unit, which is the telephone, the home phone. And my aunt said, well, nephew, if you can get out here, I'll take care of you. I said, okay. It's raining cats and dogs that particular moment. I went into the kitchen. I made me a couple of bologna sandwiches, packed them up. I got my raincoat, umbrella. I put the clothes on that I had on my back. I didn't have a dime in my pocket, but I left walking. I made it all the way to, they call it Riverfront now. It's industrial then. I made it all the way there to Industrial and 30. And there was this 18-wheeler that was parked right there at a store. And I asked him which way was he going, and he said, son, I'm going all the way to California, Los Angeles, to the truck depot. That might be a long ways for you. I said, it's exactly where I'm going. I made it all the way there. I don't know how many days it took. He even showed me how to steer the 18-wheeler, you know. And we made it, because he would be sleeping, and he was showing me while he was driving how to steer it. He said he'd put it in gear and all of that, and I would slide over and just steer it, and just hold it steady. Anyway, I had guts enough to do that, and I did it. And I made it to Los Angeles, and I called my aunt. She immediately come down, boom, scooped me up, took me to the apartment that she lived in. She and my cousin, her name was Carolyn, God bless her. And I'm like 13, maybe 14. And I had been exposed to listening to the blues and hearing traces of Charlie Parker, Lusty Young, Oscar Peterson, Stan Kenton. And then when I get to the apartment where she lived, on the next morning, when she woke up getting ready to go to work, she turned on the box She had Gene Ammons, people like that she was listening to. Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, had some Charlie Parker. They were like old 78s, weighed 5 pounds apiece, you know. And I'd listen to that all the time. And she started introducing me to different artists, mentioning like Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie, young John Coltrane, other artists that were like Dexter Gordon, Max Roach, Philly Joe Jones. Just, I could drop names all day that she would mention. And then Jazz at the Philharmonic existed. She would take me to the Jazz at the Philharmonic to see Ella Fitzgerald, Oscar Peterson, Charlie Ventura, Stan Getz, you name it, you know, all the big stars, Dexter Gordon, the Stan Kenton Orchestra, Dizzy Gillespie Orchestra, Billy Eckstine. I could just go on and on and on. And so, by this time, my head is full with nothing but jazz music, jazz music, jazz music. The only thing I would listen to. And in the meantime, I'm beating on everything that I possibly can. You know, couch pillows, aniseta, congas and bongos. And finally, I ended up with a set of drumsticks. I'm like maybe 14 or 15 now. And so now I'm playing on the back of book covers, and I get a set of brushes. I get enough money to buy me a set of brushes. And I'm practicing brushes on the back of album covers along with these records. You know, and to get to the place where I could scat these records, scat the solos, remember the intros, all different things, because I'm reading the back of the covers on what it's saying. So I'm taking it all in. However, I'm also exposed to some bad drug elements at this particular time. Anyway, I get busted. When I get busted, naturally, the Los Angeles Juvenile Department wanted me to be with my rightful parents. And by me being a dollar site, it was very easy for them to say, his parents need to come get him, and in the meantime, we're going to hold him until such time, because they didn't feel like my aunt was qualified to keep me. My stepdad get in a vehicle, drive all the way to California to get me. That was the bond that he and I, that was started, that he and I ended up being so strong with each other. You know, so he brought me back to Dallas, but Dallas still wasn't where I wanted to be. Now I'm approaching the age of 17, but in the meantime I had got exposed to Big Bo, Zanzibar, John Mitchell's club, and all these clubs had bands. There was different groups, Joe Johnson, all different kind of old rhythm and blues players, Big Bo at the Zanzibar, and Sylvester Bell and Walter Wynn were active drummers at that particular time. You know, and I had befriended them, and I used to sit down on their on their drum sets when they would be practicing, and they all admired the little spunk that I had in the way of being able to keep good time and discuss things with them and ask them different questions. So I started hanging with them. And so I'm like 15, 16, but I look 20-ish, 21. So it wasn't nothing for them to slip me in at the Longhorn Ballroom with Dizzy Gillespie's band, which was Billy Eckstine's band, Buddy Johnson's band, also Roscoe Gordon's band, Ruth Brown's band. Anywhere there was any live music going on, I wanted to be there. Bobby Samuel, at that particular time, was working with a lot of the local musicians. And I paid attention to Bobby. Bobby was very influential, you know, in my early years. So was his brother, Saul Samuel, and then Frank Samuel eventually. All of them were drummers. So I went over to the Zanzibar, and Big Bo was working. I think I'm about 15 at that particular time, approaching 16. So the drummer hadn't got there. Big Bo's band started playing, and I just took it upon myself to go up and try to do something in the way of timekeeping. And I was encouraged by the musicians. Youngster, you kind of got something. You need to try to pursue it. You need to try to get you some drums and get you some drumsticks. Get you a method book and start trying to take some lessons. Get somebody to teach you something, because you got a good feeling. You know what your feeling is in the right place. You just need to learn some technique. Anyway, by this time, the drummer come in. I think it was Walter Wynn. It may have been Bobby Samuel, but I think it was Walter Wynn. And naturally, Walter started laughing at me. You know, Benny, what are you trying to do? Take my gig and all that, you know, because he had been showing me a lot of things. He and Levester Bell. So, bam, time passed by. I'm 17 now. Boom. Like I said, Dallas wasn't the scene for me. So I managed to convince my mom that I should join the Navy. Joined the Navy, ended up in San Diego. Got exposed to the jazz scene out there. Started going over to the college, hanging out with some of the musicians. Even trying to play with some of them. In the meantime, I'm still listening, and I'm still practicing on the back of album covers with brushes, and practice on the practice pad with sticks or anything else I could hit. And I was located in I got stationed in San Diego and was located in a remote area where they had a piano and they had an old piece of drum set. And so there I was again, still associated with some kind of music instrument. Oh, and by this time also, I'm married. I already had, when I turned 17, I already had 2 kids. And that was another motive I went into service, because I wanted to be able to provide for them, which is what I did. And after I married a beautiful chick named Norma. She was my childhood sweetheart. And so they ended up in California, San Diego, with me. But I'm still exposed to some bad elements, the drugs, which went from marijuana and an occasional benzodrine in the way of speed, graduated into heroin. At the age of 21, I had already got exposed to the drum scene, the music scene, touching on it, but not really focusing and being totally dedicated. But I could struggle through a tune. But anyway, I get busted. At the ripe age, 21, I get busted. I make headlines 3 days in a row in San Diego, being connected with a cartel, and so forth, in the way of money making. Got sentenced to the California Department of Corrections with 3 life sentences, running wild. 18-month bond appearance, but I was fortunate. They ended up, it was going to be a 3-year board appearance. Excuse me. It was going to be a 15-year board appearance. But the board saw fit to run all the sentences together and run them concurrently instead of consecutively. And I ended up with an 18-month board appearance. Went to the board, got knocked down a year, and then was given a 90-day date, which made me do 2 years and 2 years and 18 months. Was that 2 years and 8 months? 2 years and 8 months. 18 months and a year, 12 months. That's 30 months. 2.5, 3 years, right at 3 years. But anyway, during this course, from day one, anytime I could listen to music, I did. Anytime I could practice with a set of sticks or brushes, I did. We were in single cells, people next door to me and down below me. They hated me, but they loved me all at the same time. And they knew that I loved jazz music, and they knew that I was trying to be a drummer, and they tolerated me beating on books, stools, doing whatever it was to try to come up with a rhythm or practice some kind of exercise. During this course, I come in contact with other professional drummers, saxophonists, bass players, and they thought enough of me to educate me verbally or Johnny on the spot in the way of me playing with them in the band room, because there were drums, there were bass and piano, and when anybody could play, that's where I wanted to be. Out on the yard, over in the education area. I was sentenced to Solitaire, California, incidentally. With Raymond Jackson and all the other. You probably remember that incident with Angela Davis and so forth. They shot Raymond Jackson off the walls at San Quentin. I didn't read about any of this. I was part of that era. But anyway, I practice. Exercise after exercise, exercise after exercise, exercise after exercise. My family relocated. They were on welfare. Moved to Los Angeles. I was released after that period of time. I had been playing, practicing. Musicians from the Bay Area would come in and perform concerts, and I had upgraded my talent well enough that I could sit in and play with them. And the institution was proud that they had a musician there that could hang with the big boys when they would come in and do a concert. So, a up on my release to Los Angeles, first thing I want to do is give me a job, give me enough money to get a set of drums. This is like, we're talking about 62, 1962 now. I'm an adult. I'm 24, 25 years old, somewhere thereabouts. Everybody that's anybody is coming to this club right around the corner from me. It's called the It Club on Washington Boulevard. Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Oscar Peterson, George Braithwaite, Yusef Lateef, anybody that's anybody, Jazz Crusaders. Oh man, it's just Harold Land, Frank Butler, Philly Joe Jones and group. Met Tony Williams when he was just a little kid and wasn't even old enough to have a card to where he could play. He had to slip and play. Anyway, I met a drummer named Frank Butler. And Philly Joe was out there at that same time. I met Philly. Philly just took a liking to me. And the feeling was mutual. And same way with Frank. And Frank and Philly were real tight and close. And Frank was working with this beautiful tenor player named Harold Land. And Harold had just come off the road with the late great Clifford Brown and Max Roach. So Harold was really on the map as a giant. And I'd make all the rehearsals with Frank. But Frank, unfortunately, had a drug problem. Sometimes he couldn't make the rehearsal, but I'd be there. So Harold would tell me, set your drums up, man, and make the rehearsal. So I learned Harold's book. After learning Harold's book, then Frank ended up getting busted. I got the gig with Harold every time Harold had a gig, and it was an independent gig, he'd give me the call, because he knew I knew his book, and he knew I was going to be trying with all my might to play the best I possibly could, to be supportive of what he was doing. And he knew that Frank had really laid it to me and give it to me, and Philly had really laid it and give it to me. And they knew that my plan was going to be reflective of Philly Joe Jones and Frank Butler, two of the greatest drummers that exist in the world, even to me today. So I said all that to say that I got exposed to a lot of beautiful cats. Hamp Halls, Leroy Vinegar, everybody that could work at the It Club at that particular time. Dexter came back from overseas, from when he was overseas, and came to New York, and then he left New York and came to Los Angeles. When he came to New York and came to Los Angeles, Philly Joe Jones is working with Dexter. But Art Blakey, Bill Douglas, Shelly Man, Charlie Purcell, they had to go to Japan on a drum clinic. Still had 3 weeks. Dexter had 3 weeks left remaining on his date. So Philly told me that I need to make a couple of rehearsals with him so I could learn Dexter's book, which was nothing but jazz standards at that particular time, and bebop standards. So that's what I did. I hung with Philly, made the rehearsals. Hamp Hall's Leroy Vinegar were in the rhythm section. Man, what a rhythm section. And anyway, they embraced me, and I ended up working with Dexter Gordon for 3 weeks, which was 3 weeks that I'll remember for the rest of my life. And then Sonny Stitt comes into the picture. And Sonny Stitt, that ended up being like a 3-year acquaintance. Sonny had Harold Land on tenor, Carmel Jones on trumpet, Phineas Newborns on piano, George Morrow, formerly of the Clifford Brown Max Roach group that had been on the road with Sonny Rollins, Clifford Brown, Max Roach, Harold Land, Clifford Brown, Max Roach, Richie Powell on piano. Anyway, Sonny told me, he said, Benny, you want this gig, you got it. You know, so then I tell my wife, I said, sweetheart, much as I love you, much as I'm crazy about the kids, I'm going to be able to provide a little bit better because I'm going to be on the road with Sonny Stitt. She said, okay, fine, if that's what you want to do. You know, in the meantime, we had a date. Our first date was in Del Mar, California. Sonny and I rode the train to Del Mar. John Houston, the piano player, and George Morrow were driving down. Sonny and I got to Del Mar. Nobody there but Sonny and I. George and John Houston, nowhere to be found. 9 o'clock came, time for us to hit. Sonny said, don't worry about it. We'll do a duo till they get here. Imagine that. Sonny Stitt and I doing a duo. Nobody but Sonny and I. Finally, after about a set and a half, George Morrow and John Houston come in. Boom. Complete quartet. We end up completing the night to a capacity crowd. Had an after party, blah, blah, blah. It was just a one-nighter. We go back to Los Angeles, work at the Ear Club for 2 weeks, leave the Ear Club, go to Jazz Workshop in San Francisco, playing opposite Cannonball Adderley and his group. Anyway, while we were there in San Francisco, which is the same period of time that Art Blake and them were getting ready to go to Japan, opening night, I look out into the audience. I'm looking in the faces of Max Roach, Art Blakey, Charlie Purcell, Bill Douglas, Shelly Manne. Billy hadn't got there yet. I tell Sonny, all these great cats out there, man. I said, man, how am I going to handle this? And Sonny said, it's your gig. No sit-ins. Play your gig. It's yours. That's what you're getting paid for. George Morrow, the bass player, beautiful cat, lovable cat, told me, he said, Benny, don't worry about it. Just play Benny Medina. Do what you do. Same way with Phineas. Phineas said, don't worry about it, baby. Do what you do. You got it. Anyway, I managed to struggle through the night. My nerve got stronger as the night progressed. Of course, Cannonball's group was playing opposite, so we'd have a break in between. Louis Hayes was in that rhythm section. All great drummers, man. And here I am, virtually, unknown, but yet I'm with one of the greatest saxophonists in the world, Sonny Stitt, that thought highly of my playing. So I said to myself then, evidently I got something,